review them, and if there's any comments or edits before they are moved to be approved. Anyone need to comment or edit on these minutes? I don't see any hands or anything, so can I get a motion to approve the minutes, please?
So moved.
So moved. I'll second.
Okay. All right, thank you, Gary. And with respect to it, no edits. We will note the abstention by the probate judge and attorney Brunetti, just because they were not here at the time. So, all right, with that, we next have on our agenda a report by Lucio.
Yes. Well, as you may know, November 17th through the 19th, we had the COSCA conference, that conference of state court administrators. In attendance were several justices, including the Chief Justice, the Chief and Deputy Chief Court Administrators, and the Executive Directors. The event held many discussion sessions on various topics, including AI. And, very briefly, a few of the state courts gave presentations on what they're doing with their respective states with regard to AI. I represented Connecticut and provided a brief summary of what Connecticut's artificial intelligence committees have been doing, explained what the two committees have been charged with, etc. But the main AI speaker, who has associations with the National Center for State Court, he did a good presentation on AI. It was basic but informative. He explained the differences between generative and predictive AI. He gave examples of how AI could help court administration with efficiencies by using self-internal LLMs, large language models, for instance, using Copilot and other services. He also spoke about utilizing AI for application code modernization, which is what we in Connecticut will be exploring to help with our legacy application upgrades. He also spoke a little bit about how attorneys are utilizing AI with the legal research and legal brief writing, emphasizing that, very importantly, that the attorney has always been and still is obligated to ensure that whatever legal product they produce with AI and submitted to the courts is 100% accurate. But the takeaway of the presentations was for the courts to understand that AI is a tool, just like many other tools that the courts utilize today. And they emphasized that the courts should be cautious, but to please consider embracing AI as soon as possible and to not postpone or dismiss the use of it. That was basically what the AI portion consisted of.
Does anyone have any questions for Lucio about anything he touched upon? Right.
Lucio, this is Judge Armada.
Yes.
Is it possible, do you know if this presentation was recorded? Is it available on a YouTube channel? Because that sounds fascinating and something that I think we could use to get a better understanding and coalesce our understanding of AI.
I could check. I don't recall it being recorded, but I could check and let you know. Absolutely. I'll let the committee know.
Thanks, Judge Armada. I wasn't at that presentation. I was at the meeting, but I was doing a rules committee at the time, which kind of transitions into, we are looking at the AI issue in rules. And I know that that there's been an interest by the judges on that committee that we form kind of a coordinated committee. I know it's really difficult to keep pace with what's going on in AI, but as far as our rules go, it seems fairly consistent throughout the country that they are requiring a certification or some kind of notification that AI is being used in whatever is being presented to the court. So the more we can coordinate these two committees, I think the more helpful it will be overall for the branch. Any other questions for Lucio before we move on to Attorney Salcedo? I don't see anyone, so.
Dibby's got his hand up just to say.
Dibby, yes, I just see it.
Thank you, Justice. I want to mention one more thing. We had another conference, the eCode conference, which Lucio, me, and Ratish Nair attended. And there was a few presentations on AI and how other states are using AI in the judicial branch. So there was some topics and some vendor presentations, for which we also may have content and material that can be shared.
That would be excellent if there's any material, because I know everyone is interested in this, and the more information we have, the better it will be to make our recommendations. So thank you. Thank you for letting us know that. Anyone else? Gary, you can be my official hand monitor. I don't have a whole screen.
I'm on it.
That's how bad mine is. Luch, it's nothing to do with your technology. It's the user.
I'm not taking it personally.
It's the user. It's not the technology. Any other questions that anybody can see but me? All right. Then, again, I'd like to invite Attorney Salcedo to discuss the AI progress in their practice. She gave us a very good presentation earlier, and I'm looking forward to hearing any updates. Do you see her?
Okay, yes. Hi,
Oh,
everyone.
okay.
Hold on, let me turn on my camera. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, hello, everyone. Great to be here today. So I just wanted to get a quick idea of what you'd like me to go over today. I know it's more about AI in law firms, right? Okay, and what we're seeing for
correct.
Perfect. Okay, great. So I have another presentation. How long do you want me to talk for? Guess is the first question.
How long is your presentation?
So I just did a 1-hour CLE recently, so I'm not going to do that, obviously. But I guess I can present the portion of it out of the CLE that talks about AI tools in the legal practice. How's that? And that's probably about 15-ish minutes, and then we can, depending on how, questions, that sort of thing.
That sounds perfect. I was going to say max of 20, but you're inside my max.
We're on the same. Okay, good.
Well,
we're talking the same language.
Save 5 minutes for rebuttal. How about that?
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Makes me want to say your honor. Okay, someone, if you could just allow me to share, please. Share the screen. Looks like it's not an option right now.
Just a minute.
Yeah.
You should have the presenter permission.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Okay. There we go. It's almost there. Okay, can you see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Thumbs up? Okay, great. Now I am going to be focused on this section, sort of the benefits of AI and what you're seeing in law firms. Before I do that, though, I do think I should skip backwards a little bit to the risks, if that's okay with everybody. I know we've already done our presentations about what AI is, but I'd like to just kind of recap on the risks and then go into the benefits. So I'm just going to go up here a little bit in the presentation and just go through these risk slides pretty quickly, because they are the things we're thinking about from the attorney perspective. So let me go ahead and just share my slideshow from this current slide. So many of you know from past presentations that there obviously are lots of risks of the use of AI, including the ones that probably are really top of mind for the courts is the idea, this third one here, are the inaccurate outputs or the hallucinations. I have a couple slides that talk about what we're seeing when attorneys submit work product, briefs, etc. to the courts, and they've relied on an AI. Most of it is attorneys are relying on ChatGPT, and ChatGPT hallucinates or makes errors and cites to cases that exist nowhere, right? They're literally made up. So that's one of the biggest risks of using AI in the legal field, is really this idea of hallucinations, or quite frankly, errors, inaccurate outputs. In addition, the other considerations around risks of use of AI include, from the attorney perspective, the legal ethical obligations. I have a slide on that. Obviously, AI can reproduce bias that's included in the data. So biased in, biased out, biased data, and then of course, data security and privacy. Okay. So I'm just going to touch upon each of these briefly. And then if we ever want to go more in depth, we can do so. So here are some of the ethical obligations that our attorneys are bound by and to. They have the duty to communicate. So that's what you guys were talking about as it relates to the courts, could be the duty to communicate the use of AI to their clients, to the courts. I just read a really interesting case, and I can send it around the chat later, about hallucinations. It was an expert witness in a case who used ChatGPT to do legal research, and the system hallucinated. It made up, it basically made up research findings. They weren't cases, but they were articles. The expert witness in that instance went and relied upon those made up articles, submitted the expert testimony to the court, citing to those articles. Later on, the attorney found out that their expert witness had used a ChatGPT, but that expert witness hadn't communicated that. And the court excluded that expert witness because of the made up citations. So just kind of an interesting new case that we're seeing where expert witnesses are also relying on AI tools. You're not just seeing attorneys. So really interesting case. I'll post that. I just read that today. So duty to communicate from lawyers, how does that duty extend? Does it extend to the courts? Duty of competence. So that implies that the attorney has the competency to use the tools, has been trained, understands them. Duty to supervise our AI tools. Do they need to be supervised just like an associate or an even stricter standard? And then finally, it implicates the duty of confidentiality when you're putting, attorneys are putting confidential client information into these systems. There's another ethical obligation, which is the ethical obligation to stay up to date on the rules. And that includes educating yourself about legal tech. I have a really good presentation on legal ethics with the actual rules and what's implicated. So if that's something that would be helpful to dive more into, either by myself or another person, we can do that next time. Bias in AI. So obviously AI is fed data. Historic data is biased, right? It's sort of the bias in, bias out. If we're crunching systems that include bias, the technology says, right, the data has bias in it, and the AI system uses data and could produce an output that is biased. So the different ways you can have bias through insufficient data. You can have this idea of baked in bias, right? Or bias that reflects socially ingrained inequalities being replicated by, or even sometimes amplified by, the AI system. And then finally, any of these biases can result in all unlawful or unfair discrimination against protected classes. So there's a couple of really good resources in this area. There's an excellent documentary on Netflix that talks about the first individual to actually figure out that there were bias in some of these AI systems, and specifically facial recognition. There's a whole documentary on Netflix that's excellent. It was actually an MIT researcher, and she was doing a study about facial recognition software. She was a woman of color, and she discovered that the facial recognition software couldn't recognize her face. And so she went on to study this and to basically be the one to whistleblow the fact that there's bias in some of these technologies that are using AI. It was specifically facial recognition software. There's also an excellent book by Orly Lobel, ORLYLOBEL. It's called The Equality Machine. And she's a law professor, and she writes about all sorts of bias that you're currently seeing replicated. And specifically, you're seeing it a lot around housing, incarceration, Hiring. So in the employment context, you're seeing it a lot around hiring decisions, firing decisions. In that particular documentary on Netflix, it talks about one of the court cases out of New York had to do with teachers being fired, and the district school system had used an AI tool to evaluate the teachers. However, it was a black box. You couldn't tell what criteria went into the AI firing decisions. And so just really interesting sorts of ways that AI is replicating or actually intensifying bias. Here's an example in the employment context. It has to do with Amazon, basically replicating bias. These are ads. Amazon was advertising for the employment context on a tool like, let's say, Facebook or LinkedIn, but they were replicating bias because they weren't actually targeting any of their ads to women, because the tool had uncovered that only, some really low percentage of women worked in STEM, and therefore they shouldn't be marketed to, right? So it's finding the bias and then it's replicating it and amplifying it. And that's in the employment context. And then hallucinations, which are basically making up law. You can see there's a lot of problems with hallucinations. Here are all the different court cases where we've seen attorneys in courts relying on a tool like ChatGPT to do case law research, in the tool hallucinating or making up cases. The original case was obviously the 2023 case. I call it the ChatGPT lawyer, right? The New York lawyer who was sanctioned because he relied on 5 cases from ChatGPT, 3 of which didn't exist anywhere, right? They weren't actual underlying citations he could click on and research. He did not do his due diligence of actually reading the citations that ChatGPT had spat out, and he used them to make an argument to the court, and he was sanctioned. Since then, you can see we've seen all these other examples, and the most recent one was the one I mentioned earlier today, where it wasn't the lawyer who was using ChatGPT, it was the expert who was using ChatGPT, and the court threw out the expert witness testimony based on the fact that he relied on a tool that hallucinated. And in fact, that expert witness was supposed to be an expert in AI. So go figure. It's a really interesting case. It's worth a read. And you can kind of see now it's extending beyond lawyers themselves. And it's now being extended to the experts in the cases. And I mean, it's really at this point a lawyer's duty, as we looked at the ethical obligations, to making sure they're at number one, asking their experts, are you using an AI tool? And if you are using an AI tool, have you actually checked the citations you're relying on, the underlying citations? So I just wanted to go over those risks because I do think they really affect the court, specifically when people are making arguments to the court. So then some security risks here, but let's jump back over in the interest of time to some of the benefits and the ways that we're seeing lawyers and law firms use technologies. So an observation from law firm clients, and this is from a corporate counsel at Google. Within the next year or so, general counsels and in-house counsels can and will demand that law firms do their work more efficiently. And they will not pay for law firm associates to spend 5 hours on something that would have taken 15 minutes if they had used generative AI. So obviously, this person's a corporate counsel at a really tech-forward company, Google, but this is the kind of thing we're starting to see at law firms are in our outside counsel guidelines. Our clients are actually asking us about AI. They're asking our law firm, are you using AI? Are you using AI on our matters? So this is starting to happen. And we're talking about like insurance companies here based in Connecticut. We're not just talking about the Googles of the world, right? Insurance companies you guys know about asking, are you using AI? These are the different use cases in the practice of law. Great use case in document review. I feel like we covered a little bit of this on my last presentation, but right, there's tools like relativity that have an AI component. So anytime you think about huge volumes of data, right? So document review, a great place, it's already tech assisted anyways, most document review with e-discovery. So how can people up level their e-discovery using a tool like Relativity's AI that helps. You still have to create the seed set and sort of mark responsive and non-responsive documents, but the AI tool can actually speed up that review process. Of course, with a human on the loop, meaning there's an attorney still overseeing the document review process, but that the machine is actually speeding that process up. Legal research is a great example. I talked a little bit about it during my last session. I'm happy to, if we have time today, to go in live and actually show you guys what that looks like. Legal drafting, also, there's a ton of legal drafting tools. Thomson Reuters has a tool called CoCounsel. I feel like LexisNexis, they have a legal drafting tool. All the big research providers have legal drafting tools. And then you have tools like Harvey is another really big tool that does the legal drafting. And so it'll help speed up the attorney's drafting time by actually suggesting additional clauses that could be added. Or the attorney can use the chatbot feature and kind of say, you know, let's say the attorney's using their own template from their internal work product, but then they want to add another clause, let's say from another tool. They could pull it from public filings, SEC filings. They could use a tool like Practical Law, and they can ask the chatbot like CoCounsel, hey, is there a clause to add to my agreement that covers X, Y, and Z? And then the chatbot through a tool like CoCounsel will go out to that other tool like Practical Law, pull in that additional clause and put it right there into their document as they're drafting. Lots of litigation uses, contract management. And then the other biggest one is people are using the tools for summarization. And all along, like, you can think summarization is needed in all sorts of use cases, summarizing cases, summarizing emails, summarizing research articles. So sort of anytime you need summarization to happen, the AI tools are excellent for it. There's all sorts of different tools for summarization. The biggest one is probably, I would say, Copilot. Copilot is Microsoft's tool. And so Copilot is a companion to any Word product. So think, any Microsoft product. So think Word, right?
Or 365.
Think Excel. Yeah. So any 365, Microsoft 365 product. So Word, where you're going to be writing, right? Excel, files, PowerPoints, email, so Outlook, right? And that Copilot sits right in there and can summarize anything you need to do within that Office suite. So I would say the Copilot tool is becoming very popular in both law firms, but also in law firm clients, because it's already sitting in Microsoft Word where most people are doing most of their work, and it's helping to speed that up. By doing different things like summarizing your emails, for example. It can summarize attachments to emails, and so it can speed some of the admin work up. So I'm going to take a pause for a second and just see if anyone has any questions before I keep moving forward.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Judge Armada.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I've and some of the outside stuff I've seen where AI has been being used in an assessment capacity in criminal cases to project sentences, in PIs to evaluate cases and things like that, probability of success on trials and things like that. Are you seeing any of those products starting to creep into the legal marketplace?
Yeah, so I would say at the outset of a litigation matter for evaluation, as attorneys are trying to figure out a couple different factors, right? At the outset of a case, you're trying to predict potentially even case outcome. Are we going to take this case, right? Are there any claims that can be merited? What have similar, let's say it's in a, if there's damages or some sort of award, what have similar cases garnered? And then finally, what do we need to charge the client? So I'm seeing those types of tools used in the beginning, let's just say of a litigation matter, as an attorney trying to wrap their head and arms around the scope, and also to start, the value of the case. Sorry, there's another question popping up. So I am starting to see some of those. And then also if they're trying to predict outcome. There's a lot of tools that are they're not AI right now, but they probably will start be around how have judges decided similar matters. And there's analytics tools that already exist. So even as attorneys are choosing the forum, where are they going to file if they're on the plaintiff side? There's tools that people are starting to use for that. Does that answer your question? Yeah. I have some of the analytics tools I could show you at some point. Most of them are in Westlaw. But I haven't seen I've seen some of the early stages, like case evaluation tools. And I think there's another question. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering the use of AI in the construction of especially things that become documents it would cascade down through the process of what attorneys are dealing with. And I hear you describing, the law firm itself and the ways that AI is involved in the law. But I'm wondering, are attorneys so the ACLU 2 weeks ago issued a report saying police departments should not be using AI to construct their police reports, their incident reports. The medical doctors, a huge number of doctors, especially using the Epic system, have AI tools built in. And both of those situations, research has shown, and with the medical one, personal experience has shown, they are profoundly incorrect. And so the information that you're relying on as an attorney coming to you even, it almost is like those things come to the court too. And as the court, I think we need to be looking at them in parallel with looking at lawyers and what lawyers submit. The entirety of the infractions docket at some point will be AI generated things or AI involved things. But I'm wondering what conversations happening in the legal world about the things that you're receiving, and how do you validate them and how do you trust them?
Yeah, I'm thinking two thoughts as you bring that up. One is, I know for at least sitting in my own law firm, we've been very slow to adopt AI technology because some of the concerns you just mentioned, which are that attorneys still need to have their eyes on the universe of which they're, let's just say in a litigation matter, then creating a case, because you can inadvertently basically narrow, only look at a slice of that documentation by accident, by using a tool, right, that does the culling for you, for lack of a better word, right? And now the attorney doesn't have the ability to kind of see the breadth potentially of what was originally there. And I'm thinking about it specifically in doc review. But obviously e-discovery has been going on for a long time, and there's always been that struggle in e-discovery of attorneys touching every single document versus can the tool do it at a rate of like 85% or higher. So, that's going to be the struggle, right? Is the tool better than the human? And at what accuracy rate can we measure to determine whether this is trustworthy? So I know that doesn't totally answer your question, but we've been slower to adopt technology just because of these. We're wrestling with that. Does that make sense? So
absolutely. So are we.
Yeah, right. Yeah, some firms are like, early adopters. They're creating their own chat bots who will search their own internal work product and help them find things. I think that's one antidote, is that you start off with your own data that you have better control of, and you start putting in solutions where on your own data. Does that make sense? So you can kind of like get your arms wrapped around your, yeah.
And I don't know if you can speak to this or not, because I hear you saying you're like us, we're slow because we're concerned. But to the extent that you do that, where are the safeguards? Because anything that chatbot consumes, anything that AI tool consumes, ultimately becomes no longer things you own. It gets absorbed into something larger. And so how do you protect yourself as a business, as a fiduciary of that data, of that information for your clients from those issues?
So I was involved in crafting the AI policy for my firm, and we do not let people use ChatGPT, for example. So our initial policy was you can't use anything, right? Back in 2023, when we first started seeing lawyers being sanctioned, right? We said, no, don't use any AI. And then we took some time and crafted an AI policy that said you can use AI in our firm sanctioned tools. And to have a firm sanctioned tool, it has to go through a rigorous process through our information governance committee, of which we have a director of information governance. And we're going to actually look at it with business people of the firm, and plus our attorneys who advise law firms, other law firms who are using AI. So they tend to be pretty cautious. And we're going to look at the tool. We're going to, number one, make sure that our data is not being used to train the model, right? We're going to probably look at something like a closed instance or our own, like where is it being run? Is it something that we can control on premise? If it is going to be in the cloud, what tool is it being run through? And we're making sure there's safeguards in the contract language that do not allow the tool to be trained on our data. I would say those are like the big things. But of course, we know then companies are changing their service agreements in the middle of, providing services. You could look at Zoom started doing that, where, they completely just changed their service agreements for existing customers and started being able to record information if you were using Zoom. So we know that's problematic. Even if you look at the agreements, they can change their agreements. However, there is a little bit of, I don't know, on the flip side, I was at Thomson Reuters for 15 years. And if you start making all of your customers really mad by disclosing all of their data, quickly you are going to start not having as many customers. Does that make sense? So there is a little bit of protection. However, you don't want to be the firm that's the example, that's right, or the court system, or right. You don't want to be the one who made the example of, right. You don't want to be that attorney in New York in 2023 that became the ChatGPT lawyer. Yeah. So, I mean, I would rely on all the people that you have in IT, all, your committees to make sure they're really evaluating these tools before moving forward. Does that help a little bit? I know this is like.
Sure.
But these are the exact things where everyone's wrestling with, right? How do we innovate? Think of it like this. I love this. Think about the scales of justice, right? How do we balance innovation with protecting our data? I feel like that is the ultimate question. And I think that's also why I see more of the law firm, but I think that's why a lot of law firms are creating their own internal chatbots that are on their own servers that they have control over, or partnering. I've seen firms partnering. So it's called there's always, do you buy it or do you build it, right? Those are the questions. I've also seen firms partner with a company and use the company's kind of architecture or framework, but with more safeguards and protections for the data. So like a hybrid. Okay, I'm going to keep moving forward, but please keep asking questions. Let's see this is just more about positive sentiment. So this is more just about the fact that this is a Thomson Reuters survey. It talks about how in the next 5 years, you're going to see more legal professionals using AI. Yeah, we all know that, right? Right, it's coming. It's going to be here. It's going to change the way people are doing work in the legal field. And why? Why is it's really because of efficiency. It's really because it's freeing up. This particular study said it frees up about 200 hours per timekeeper per year. I mean, that's a huge amount of administrative time that, quite frankly, a lot of law firms' clients, if you look at corporate clients anyways, are not willing to pay for. Right? It's different, obviously, as the courts are looking at this, because you have individuals who are pro bono. You have plaintiff attorneys who, you have all sorts of different types. My particular firm, we do a lot of corporate work. And we do work with a lot of general counsels who really want us to be efficient. Does that make sense? So they're sort of pushing this efficiency to the law firms. And if your clients start asking for efficiency, law firms usually listen, right? and find solutions to become more efficient. And then these are the top uses we've already talked about. So here are some examples when we look at each of these types. And it's legal research, right? We already looked at the risks of legal research, though. So at my firm, what we do is anyone who wants to use an approved law firm tool, they have to go through a training. And I helped actually develop the training. And what the training does, it's a 101 to AI. So like, what is AI? What are the risks? And then they have to take a quiz and pass the quiz in order to be able to use the AI tools. And specifically what we're trying to protect against is really a lot of the tools we have are in the legal research realm. We're trying to protect against a ChatGPT lawyer, right? We're trying to protect against our attorneys using a tool, the tool hallucinating, making up case law, and then the attorney not double checking and reading the underlying citation and citing to the thing, right? And getting in trouble. So, so we make sure that people know they've got to read the underlying citations in full, which is honestly just good research practice, but we kind of drill that message home. And that's where we're living right now, is more in the legal research, but there is great document generation. We've been looking at a lot of tools by practice group, especially for the admin work, to help just offload some of that. And also in the law firm, we have to look at a lot of our processes. So I've been meeting with all different practice groups and processing, improving their current workflow to see if there is a technology tool they could use to be more efficient. So that could be anything from legal research to drafting their documents, to understanding the rules of the different courts we're filing in, to automate a little bit of case management and as the cases move through the system. So these are all sorts of things we're starting to take a look at. And then even providing legal information, this could be really interesting to the court system for how you present. I know I've heard this came up at one of the prior sessions we had, how to help with access to justice and providing legal information to the general public, which now, you know, there's a website, you have clerks at the court. I used to clerk in the family court when I was starting off in my career. So anyways, how do you get that information out to the public so they can educate themselves, especially, you know, a lot of pro ses? How can they get the right document to file? How do they understand the process? Do they know which court they need to go to, even to start off, like, right, based on where they live? So that could be another interesting thing for the court system. FAQs, websites, that sort of thing. Here's an example for people to look, avvo.com. I was at a conference this summer for law librarians and legal professionals. There was a woman talking about she's working on a project right now with access to the courts. I'm happy to connect someone with her. She was great. And it was all about access to justice and how can AI help create greater access to justice by getting information in people's hands as they need it. And then legal analysis. I know we're kind of coming up on time, so this just shows you all the companies in the legal space that are doing something with AI. There's a lot of them. A lot of companies, a lot of startups. What we've done is we've started with our main partners for legal research, and we've asked them, tell us what you're currently doing for AI. How do you currently have it in your products? Do we have access to any of those? And then what is your vision for the next 1 year, 2 year, 5 years about where you're going with AI? So that's sort of how I started. And these are the players I went to begin my own education. I went to Westlaw. I know I told you guys I spent 15 years at Thomson Reuters before I joined Robinson & Cole, advising with law firms on legal tech. So my firm already had relationships with Thomson Reuters. So I went out and asked Westlaw, Thomson Reuters, tell me what you're doing for Westlaw and AI. Tell me what you're doing for practical law. I went out to Bloomberg. I went out to Lexis. And I said, show me what you're currently doing for AI for legal research, and then show me your roadmap. Because a lot of the companies have legal research and then they're adding on the drafting piece. And then, show me what you're looking at. Show me what you are seeing. I asked them to help educate me what you're seeing attorneys use. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody too, the courts could say, show me what you're seeing courts using besides us, right? Legal research, I think, is a great place to start. It's kind of like an easy area. I know the courts already have subscriptions. I'm not sure if you guys I knew you used to use Westlaw. I don't know what you currently have. And so you can say, someone can say, what does our subscription include the AI? It probably doesn't. And what would that look like? And what are you seeing other courts do? So I feel like that's a really good place to work with your partners there. This is Westlaw's, and I'll take you guys through this and then I'll pause for questions. How's that? I'm going to show you quickly. I know I did this last time pretty quickly. I'll show it to you again, and then you guys just tell me if you want me to go live, and I can actually like run the research in real time and show you it. But this is Westlaw's natural language search, meaning it's not the AI search. And I ask a simple question like, why is the sky blue here? And you can see when you run a natural language search, it's looking for your terms. So it's saying, it's pulling up a lot of blue sky, obviously, right? It's looking at blue sky laws. And it's also pulling up a company named Blue Sky. So I'm going to compare that to an AI-assisted research one run on Westlaw, and this is why is the sky blue. And it's actually the AI system, what's different, it's interpreting your question and it's understanding the context that you're asking a question about why the sky is blue. You're not simply looking for the terms blue and sky or sky and blue, right? And so here it's telling you the answer has to deal with the Earth's atmosphere. And there's a phenomenon that's not directly addressed. However, here are some cases, right, that talk about the properties of light and wavelengths. And then it cites to the two cases that talk about, right, the scientific phenomenon that makes the sky blue. At that point, as the researcher, you can go ahead and click on any of these cases and make sure they're accurate. And this is where people are getting into trouble. They're reading the output from the AI tools, right? Remember the ChatGPT lawyer? The ChatGPT lawyer wasn't using Westlaw. The ChatGPT lawyer was using ChatGPT, but it was a very similar, right, question. Why is the sky blue? The lawyer got an answer and then just copied and pasted the answer and the citations right into the brief, the memo of law, and submitted that to the court. And that's how they got in trouble. Instead of, right, we all know the right way to do research would say, okay, this is interesting. It's pointing me in the right direction. Let me read these cases and make sure they're actually citing, accurately. So, you'd go into each case, you'd make sure they're citing the proposition of law that you want to cite for, or answering the question why the sky is blue, and then you can cite to them. I'm kind of thinking for the courts, it would be really interesting. So universities are doing this. Universities are able to have these like plagiarism checkers. And one, I'm just thinking that it'd be really cool somehow. And I'll start asking around about this. Maybe someone else knows. Are courts checking? Right? Is there a way to check these briefs and memos of law to see if AI was used? Probably not at this time, but I could imagine, if not already in the near future, there would be a tool like that, because universities are able to run the work product through these tools, not so much for AI, but for plagiarism. So it's kind of a thought. I think, right now, what can you do as courts and as judges? You can ask, right? And make sure the lawyers are telling you if AI has been used. But that was just a thought I had, is there a way to check people's work beyond asking? I mean, right now you can ask, did you use AI? And if they assert that they didn't, then if they start, using it, there's a problem. So that's Westlaw. I'll show you practical law screenshots and then I'll pause. So you guys may have heard about this study that was done about hallucinations. And I have a slide on this because it's really important. It's a Stanford study. Right here, Stanford University Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence Study. You can look it up. They did a study of all the major research tools to see if they hallucinated. And you can see here's ChatGPT. ChatGPT hallucinated about 47% of the time, meaning that almost half of the outputs by ChatGPT rendered a completely erroneous citation. It's really high. ChatGPT is the worst of it. And then you can see practical law was a little bit lower. I want to say this is about 17%. Westlaw still had errors. It wasn't error-free. So people still need to read the underlying case law if you're using a system like that. And then Lexis was a little bit lower. When this came out, Thomson Reuters said, okay, we're finding holes in the way you did the study. The questions you asked were compound questions. We want to redo it, right? So they're getting a chance to redo it. So we haven't seen the redone study. Who knows if it's going to stay this way? One of the problems they found too was that the Westlaw answer was twice as long as the Lexis answer. And the second you have an answer that's longer, it's more prone to errors, right? So anyways, I think this is just really important. If you haven't seen this study and you're looking into legal research using AI, it's worth taking a look at. But the worst culprit, again, was ChatGPT. We tell people at law firm, use the tools we've said you can use. Do not use ChatGPT, right? Use the sanction tools and check your underlying citations. Read them. Do not copy and paste and send something to a client or the court, ever. Okay. And then, so again, this is literally what we say, right? This is what we say to them. Do not replace thorough research. Do not put confidential client information into the tool, meaning don't put party names, client names. You could use something like insurance company. You don't have to use a proper name like Travelers. So these are some of the things that we recommend during the training. And that's about it. So I'm going to pause now. I think I went over a little bit, but I want to see if there's other questions or anything else you guys want me to do today.
Does anyone have any questions? Oh, I think PJ.
Yeah, I see one. Yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, when the PC became prevalent, the length of briefs, the length of documents, the volume of documents filed in court files got bigger because it was easier to create larger documents, longer documents, more. And I'm wondering if at the law firm side of things, you're beginning to see or feel documents that you submit to court that involve any AI research becoming either longer or denser or more complex. Because I perceive those things then as driving the court. You know, your question before, is the court checking? Well,
Yeah.
Not only is the court checking, but is the court able to consume the volume and complexity of information it's being given?
Yep.
That would push the court to have to find some way to use legal research clerks to consume information fast enough and efficient enough, as you were talking about with your own firms and your clients, in order to continue doing the work we're doing.
That's right. Can I if we can take like 5 minutes, or 2 minutes or 1 minute, can I show you a tool that does sort of what you're hypothesizing about? Would that be okay for everyone?
Yeah,
sure. 1 to 2 minutes.
Okay, super quick. Okay, I'm already in Westlaw. I'm going to extend my session here. I'm going to Westlaw and I'm going to show you this tool that exists. What's really interesting about this, it was never marketed as an AI tool. And by the way, this is where the AI tool sits in Westlaw. This was never marketed as an AI tool, but then for a little bit, it was marketed as an AI tool. So here you can see when things are marketed AI, they have AI on them. But this tool, and this one might be one that the courts have right now. So I would have someone look into this. This is called Quick Check. It sits on Westlaw. It's judicial view. So to your point, can you consume the large amounts of data? You can I'm going to just show you the Quick Check. I'm going to talk and try to upload at the same time. But you can put up to 6 documents here, 3 from one party side plaintiff, 3 from the defendant. You can then, the clerks can use this tool to cross-reference those 2 documents. So I'm just going to put the brief for the plaintiff in there. Hold on, let me see if I can. And I'm going to put the, okay, we've got this. And then I've got, here we go, that one. Okay. I'm going to put those in there. And then I can just drag them to the proper place. So let's see here. Plaintiff, appellant, and appellant. This is the, okay, let's just say I put this, I'm trying to do this on the fly. I feel like I'm missing something, but anyways, you get the idea, right? Is that I can put these documents here up to 6. The courts can do this, the clerks can do this, and then assign, okay, then you have to assign it, and then you can start your analysis, and you can run it through this tool. That will then make a comparison for you. It would take a little extra time now for me to actually run this. What I can do is I can show you quickly what it would look like if you're just doing opposing counsels, but you get the idea. These are the types of tools that could allow the clerks to really easily go through documents from either side and compare them to each other, and basically start doing the research for the judges that they need to, and start poking holes in arguments from either side and actually compare those documents to one another. So a super powerful tool that exists today and does a lot of what you're talking about. Does that make sense? But just to give you a flavor of the kind of stuff that exists today for technology. Again, if this I usually run this beforehand if I know I'm going to show anyone it, because it does take about a minute. But does this sort of start getting at the heart of your question and the types of tools that you could use to handle the complexities that are coming, that exist today, and we're going to see more into the future?
And you're confirming that it's almost unavoidable.
Yeah, there you go. And this is what it looks like. From here, this is opposing counsel's briefs, but automatically it's given you with their key cite flags every case they cite to. Anytime they've quoted, if they've quoted accurately, it gives you a table of authorities. And then finally, it recommends cases you should cite to when you're poking holes in their argument, right? So this is opposing counsel's brief. I got in, it says, they cite to this Democratic Party of Wisconsin. The appeal was not patently frivolous, and it tells you why and gives you recommendations you can start making the counter argument. And then when you do the judicial view, it's going to basically, it would be what the clerks or the judges could look at and say, okay, one side argued this, the other side argued this. Here's a list of cases that I should be looking at to make up my own mind about what the outcome should be. Okay, I will stop. I could obviously talk about this stuff forever. Super exciting. Let me know if I could be of help in the future on any of these topics. I'm here as a resource.
Well, it was incredibly informative and detailed, and it's given us a lot to think about. One of the charges, I think, of this committee is to try to come up with certain specific recommendations that judicial might consider using. So that's one thing I'd ask the members of the committee to start thinking about. It may be too early to do it. We may need more information, but after hearing all the different ways that it can be used from Attorney Salcedo, I think that we have some areas that I hope we can recommend for the judicial branch to get started with. I know that we were supposed to hear from Claudia on the rule changes by any state, but I'm also very cognizant of your time. So Claudia, with my apologies, I'm going to put that over to our next meeting and open it up to the committee right now. If there's anything specifically they'd like us to add, or if you're just going to leave it to Lucio and I to come up with the next steps. I don't hear or see anything. Luch, do you see anything?
No.
All right, so Lucio, you're in charge of all the next steps.
Sounds good. We'll take one step further. We will come up with next steps.
And Claudia, again, we're going to hear from you. I think it's still a work in progress, and maybe we'll even have some more from our rules committee for you to be able to report on. With that, I think we should have obviously another meeting. I know rules is around February, I think they said 10th is my recollection. Oh, Judge Armada's agreeing. Perhaps we should go into March just to give some people some time to think about what we've heard so far and where we would want to go. So we will get you some dates, hopefully several to choose from, and then we can come up with an agreed upon date. Is there anything else that anyone would like to discuss today before we adjourn? And again, thank you so much, Attorney Salcedo, for your wonderful presentation. It was very, very informative, and I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I guess I'd be curious when we go over the rules, specifically duty to disclose. I'd be curious around attorneys' duty to disclose the use of AI to the courts,
Right.
Specifically themselves, but also for like their experts. That was an
Well,
example I just saw today.
Right.
Right.
And that,
Yeah.
and we're going to start breaking down into working groups. So I definitely think that you have a lot of information that would help. And I know that the bar has been very active in trying to help us as well. So
Great.
you gave us some good ideas. And you, again, I'm glad to hear about that experts, because we're talking about experts in a variety of reasons over at Rules. And this might be, again, one that's really in plain sight for us, that they're doing the same as everyone else, and we should be cautious in approaching these topics as a court system. All right, with that, I forgot to start by saying Happy New Year to everyone, but have a Happy New Year, and we'll get you some dates in March, and thank you again for participating on our committee. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.